Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Basics, a series where we have honest conversations about mental health. In this episode, we're talking about BIPOC Mental Health Month, which is happening in July, and the messages that we're honoring here at Tualoha and exploring with Black, Indigenous, and people of color at the heart of it. So there are four statements that our team has been spending a lot of time this month talking about, emphasizing, and encouraging our audience to really sit with and honor. And while these statements can apply to anyone, they are especially important for those in BIPOC communities. And before we dive into this conversation, I want to introduce you to today's crew because we've got lots of new faces, mine excluded. If you haven't met me yet, I'm the social media and communications manager here at Tualoha. And I'm being joined by a great crew today, so I'm going to give them the opportunity to introduce themselves.
Hi guys, my name is Bree, short for Brianna. I'm the Fine Help Program Manager with Tualoha. August will make 4 years that I've been with the organization, and my role pretty much consists of managing our treatment and recovery scholarship program with helps with the cost of mental health treatment. And then I also manage our Fine Help tool, which is a database of mental health resources that are free, sliding scale, and affordable services across the United States. And a fun fact about me is that I've also worked as a professional fashion stylist. I've styled several photo shoots.
Hi, everyone. I'm Auslyn James. I'm the Director of People Operations at To Write Love in Her Arms. I oversee all aspects of HR. So you're talking about like your recruiting, your employee relations, benefits, the whole gamut. Fun fact about me is that years ago, after what I thought was a failed interview in downtown Manhattan, I bumped into a stranger who I talked at length with about like this rehab in Antigua where I'm from, and it's called Crossroads. Turns out that that stranger was Eric Clapton, and the facility belonged to him. It was very funny. I only realized this after he walked away, and then I looked him up, and his picture came up.
Well, hey everyone. My name's Sheena, Sheena Grosshans. I'm the Director of Key Relationships here at To Write Love. And what that means is that I basically connect with generous people who want to be a part of our mission and figure out a way that they can tangibly provide hope and help for those who are struggling. A fun fact about me is that I used to own a vintage China rental company and got to do all kinds of fun and fancy weddings. So we even got published in Martha Stewart, which was like peak for me. So yeah, it was really fun.
That's really cool. That's cool. I don't think I knew any of those fun facts about any of you, so I just learned three new things. So with each statement, we really want to know what it means to you personally, and how it's kind of showed up in your life. And I'll kind of reveal these statements as we go along for our audience. They'll also be in the description of this episode for anyone who's kind of wanting to see what all we're going to talk about. So the very first statement is, I don't need you to be strong. I just need you to be here. Does anyone want to take it away on talking about that one?
Yeah, absolutely. For this particular statement, that one resonated with me heavily. I think in the BIPOC community, there's this expectation that, and this has been something that has just been systemic, and there's this expectation that BIPOC folks should be strong, right, and that we can withstand whatever. We should be resilient at all times, and so there's the societal expectation, and then there's also like an innate expectation also that we set within ourselves because it's expected of us, and so it's just like we have all these challenges where we have to show up in a different kind of way. We have to do extra just to feel like it's okay for us to exist in a space. And so even to the point where healthy boundaries aren't paid attention to, right? So in instances like this, what ends up happening is that you work and work and work and work until you're tired, or until you just can't do it anymore. You put yourself in positions where you take on this burden, or take on things that become so overwhelming because it's this expectation that you can handle it. And as much as we always say, it's okay to ask for help, there's this stigma that we don't need to be helped. And so wanting to be, just it's okay to be strong, but not to a point where it is becoming taxing to you. And outside of that, like, just from a BIPOC standpoint and the community standpoint, you know, it's no longer about like being resilient. I think what it means to the community is about, having support, being able to have the support that you can show up in moments when every day, in moments when you need to show up, having that level of support. I know for me, um, as a mom, as a professional, being able to like balance being a professional, being a mom, being a friend, being, a sister. That's hard because I know I take on way more than I probably need to, because I always have this is this way of like having, proving yourself, because of who I am. And because I know that society looks at me in a different light, I feel like I always have to take on extra to prove myself to folks, right? And so, being able to step back and implement healthy boundaries, I think is really important for our community and for me, because we don't always have to be that strong one. We always talk about checking on your strong friends, right? Because your strong friends are the ones that really need to be checked in on. We're always out there checking in on our friends, but who's checking in on us, And so, it's this thing where, we'll show up, but we also need individuals to show up for us in the BIPOC community. So that can look like, allyship, that could look like, educating yourselves, but we need you to be here with us as much as we want to be.
So the second statement that we're focusing on this month is there is beauty in softness. So interested to hear how this one kind of shows up for you.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit about this and kind of piggyback on what Auslyn was sharing. I think that we have a community, especially in the BIPOC community, especially for women in the BIPOC community. There's such incredible stories of strength and survival. A lot of that has come not by choice, but by circumstance. And so I think that there is this stigma really of just, if you are weak, sometimes these stories that are woven into your family and where you're from and whatever adversity your family has overcome can be used, and maybe it's sometimes as a means to like bolster you, like, oh, well, when I was your age, I was a single mom and I was doing this like by almost, whatever. Or, oh, you'll never believe, like, if you can't get through this, you'll never get through what your grandma got through or what your auntie did, And so I think that there's these incredible stories of resilience and strength, that sometimes get shared, but sometimes it can also make us feel like there's no space to be soft and to need help and to not be strong like that ancestor or that friend or that family person was. And the phrase "there is beauty in softness" is just really important to me, specifically just because of my own lived story of going through loss of a parent, going through a lot of entanglements with family issues, and finding freedom there through therapy and through needing help. But it took 3 years of me resisting it because I thought that wasn't for me. And everyone else in my family, everyone else that I knew had gone through and survived something like this. So surely I could, but I learn and have continued to learn, especially as I've added children to our crew. Each child, I think, brings me to the end of myself in a different way I didn't realize possible. But I've learned that there's such beauty in asking for help from your community and seeing your strength as the community that you've invested in to build. That's really powerful because we get to invest in our community. We get to show the kind of culture that we want to build for our families and our friends, and get to be there for one another. And that's the beautiful thing about being strong and being resilient. You have people to help, but there's the softness is asking for that help and realizing, we're better with everyone. So that specific phrase really resonated with me, because it was my kind of related to my own personal journey of understanding, that soft doesn't mean weak, that soft can also mean an invitation for others in my community to also need others, an invitation for others in my community to share how difficult grief is for them and how difficult the loss of a parent is for them, an invitation for others in my community, and honestly, even in their extended community, to ask about things that I've gone through, like EMDR therapy or ART therapy, or the ways that those things are actually effective and helpful in moving past trauma. And when I get to share my story of softness, my vulnerability, it gets to, provide tools and resources that strengthen up everyone else around me. So I think that, yeah, there's a beautiful strength in our culture, but there's a beautiful strength in also being soft and needing others as well.
I love that. Does anyone
That was
else
beautiful,
have anything
Sheena.
they want to add?
I did want to, one thing that Sheena mentioned was that soft doesn't mean weak. And I feel like that is so accurate, especially in the BIPOC community, because there's been so many times where you may have heard people say or seen on social media about our boys being soft because they show emotion, because they cry. Stop being soft. That doesn't mean that they're weak or soft or anything. That is a healthy expression of emotion. Talk to them about why they're crying. Don't label them as soft or weak. And I think there is beauty in processing those emotions in these young boys, in particular, because they grow up to be men who don't show emotion, who are unable to just connect with people because they don't want to seem weak. So I love that you said soft doesn't mean weak, Sheena.
Yeah, I think that's I love that you related that specifically to men too, because that I realized too, going vulnerable here, like in my own marriage, that my idea of what communication is and what role my husband is to play, like for me, like that was really skewed, and we needed to work that out. Because of kind of the different archetypes that I had grown up with of just strength maybe not being like emotion, or strength not being discussion. So I love that you brought that up, because that's something that I'm constantly like, oh yeah, okay, I need to work that out for myself too.
I think also, with trauma comes like people end up becoming like really hard, right? You become very cold and unfazed. And so a lot of times people may look at, sometimes women and black women as like this strong and like, oh, I remember when I lived in the Bronx, like when I walked, just because I didn't want to be catcalled, right? I used to have my face like a particular kind of way, like, like don't call me, like leave me alone. My face is not, it's giving, leave me alone, right? So but one of the things that I learned too, it's okay to be respected and be soft. Like like have the softness about you. Live in your soft era and not yeah, and you don't have to be this like this, you don't have to change or be so hard, all the time due to the trauma that you've dealt with. As you go through life and you've gone through therapy or you've found like healthy ways of coping with things, there you could get to the point where you're starting to like soften up, not necessarily be weak, soften up to the point where you're still respected, but you don't have to be this like, where I worked in the construction industry, and as an HR professional, I was an HR department of one. And when I worked in the construction industry, there was like, there was this stigma for a female coming into the construction industry to be like, to keep up with the guys, you know what I mean? Whatever that looks like, the stereotype, right? This strong minded mentality. And, I did that for a very long time. And then I was like, this is not me. Like, I felt like I was an imposter because I did not know who I was. I felt like I was trying to be this like person that I was not. But I recognized very quickly that I could still be the soft me. I could still have that softness about me and still have the beauty and still be that same professional, still be respected. And so, not because I walk into rooms where people look different and are different and act different, that means that I have to conform to the same way. So, I love that, like Bree said, I love that Sheena mentioned that there's beauty in softness, and that does not mean softness does not mean weakness, because you don't have to show up and be this person that you're not just so that you can prove to people that you're not weak.
Yeah, I love all of that. That y'all had a lot of good things to say on that one. I almost don't want to move on to number three, but you probably have good things to say about this one too. The next statement on the list is prioritize thriving. You were never created just to survive. So I'd love to hear if you guys have any expansions on that statement.
Yeah, sure. I'll start off. For that statement, I feel like I'll speak for myself. I don't want to speak for everybody, but I feel like there are so many times where I get caught up in just the cycle of life, go to work, eat, am I exercising, just surviving instead of thriving and being intentional about living. And for myself, I know that is just a result of my childhood and trauma and things that I have experienced. Is like, we're just looking forward to the next day, to, the anxiety of what do I have to do tomorrow? What do I need to get done? What bill is due? And I get stuck. And I'm pretty sure it's a generalized statement, because people it's something that has been going on for years. So it is considered one of those intergenerational traumas that we as a people and culture, we aren't intentional about thriving, about living, about experiencing things that life has to offer. We just get stuck in, not living. And I think that lately, I have been trying to be more intentional with experiencing new things, getting outside of my comfort zone, dealing with the anxieties of, you know, trying to just stay in the house, well, what happens if I go outside, all these things going on in the world, but just being intentional about living my life, because, people are passing away every day. That's a sad reality. We never know when somebody is going to pass away. So, I think that it's important to make sure that you are intentional about living your life and thriving, living the best life, live your best life.
I agree, Bree. I'm a mom, and I'm a mom of two. Wow, it's so weird saying that. I'm a mom. I have a newborn, but I'm a mom of two, and I remember when it was just Ava, Michael, and I, and between the soccer games, practice, um, work, showing up as a wife and everything else, mom, an employee. Um, there were days that I felt like I was just, it was just like the next hour and the next hour and the next hour, and I needed to do that, and I know for a lot of us in the BIPOC community, we don't feel like we need help, right? So we would take on, like, as a parent or as a mom, and this doesn't mean that if you're not a parent or if you're not a professional or whatever the case may be, that this doesn't apply to you. I feel like it applies to all of us. We take on a lot, and so sometimes it may mean that get someone to clean the house, get someone to start delegating tasks, get someone to do these things so that you can put the time back into your day. And if you don't have the resources to necessarily like do that, then maybe come up with like a schedule. But when you're coming up with that schedule, make sure you incorporate yourself in that schedule, time for yourself and time for doing things. I think that in our community, we weren't built to just survive, right? And I think that's really important because a lot of us weren't really taught like financial literacy. A lot of us weren't really taught things that and how to build generational wealth. And so we're out here working to do that. And I feel like the newer generation has been exposed to certain resources that Generations in the past were not. And so now we know. And so we're trying to change that. But in the past, that was never the case. And so we were just continuing to work and work and work and work. And it was a cycle, you know? And so now we have, you know, generations trying to change and trying to break curses, you know, for especially like wealth building within our community. And so because we're always spinning that wheel, right, and for a lot of us we haven't done that. It feels like we lived to just survive. We're living to just get to the next payday, or we're living to just get to the next moment. It's hard for us to take a vacation. We have to take up 2 and 3 jobs just to be able to make it. And, you know, we know what the economy is today, but outside of that, it's like been ingrained in us to work. You know, we're working and we're toiling until we can get to a place that feels like enough. And sometimes some of us don't get to the place that feels like enough, you know? And so it's something where this statement helps to break, you know, if we can get the work in, we can do the work. This statement helps to break those generational things that are holding us, you know, hostage to what the folks in our, you know, our ancestors and the folks that are in our past, in our family, have had to hold on to. You know, it allows us to understand that we were not built to just survive. We are okay with thriving. We should be okay with thriving. Be okay with taking a step back. Be okay with resting. Be okay with building wealth, with educating ourselves on what that looks like, so that generations to come can benefit from this.
I love that. It's this idea of like anti-hustle culture, right? Um, I think I remember very vividly. I did a short stint where I was a part of an AmeriCorps program, and it was this really cool collaborative of a bunch of different, like right after college group kids together, and they did this exercise, and it talked about the various starting lines that people had in life. And so for every moment, that every thing that they were to say, like you either took a step forward or a step back. So if you grew up in a family that had both parents, for instance, like you got to take a step forward and your starting line in life was just a little bit more forward, you know. I remember so specifically that it was, if you are a part of a marginalized community, you know, BIPOC community, take a step back. You know, if you are a first gen American, like take a step back, you know. And it was like, oh, like I'm stepping back, you know. And it just kind of pointed out those different starting lines that everyone had. And I think that especially for women, for people in the BIPOC community, you know, like we see that our starting line might be a little bit further back, and it just enforces that like hustle culture more. You know, we're just like, we got to get going, we got to get to that like end line, we got to get to the same line, you know, that everyone's at. And kind of makes us feel bad for thriving and for pausing and for not just like achieving and pushing forward and pushing ourselves to the limit.
Okay, to end the episode and kind of wrap it up, wanted to talk about a statement that's actually a question. And it is, how are you really doing? And there's some purpose behind that statement, but then there's also just the practicality of the statement, and actually asking, like, how are you really doing? So if you want to answer that question and just give yourself a moment to be honest, you are more than welcome to do that. Or if you want to talk about kind of why that statement is really, really important, feel free to take that away.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start that one, Kayla. Um, So, how are you really doing? I feel like that's such a simple question that can also be so complex. It's a simple question that can oftentimes be looked over. So many times we're going through our days, especially in the BIPOC community. Hey, how are you doing? I haven't seen you. Oh, I'm good. When in reality, we're not really good. You know, we are struggling. We're not taking care of ourselves physically. We're dealing with all these things, but we get in such a habit of just wearing these masks. I think Auslyn mentioned earlier about being, you know, imposters. You know, I know growing up, it was difficult to really express myself because one, I didn't learn how to do that effectively, but also because I grew up in a single parent household. So my mom was, working or in school or doing what she had to do to take care of us. So there were times where it was just me and my brothers. I was the only girl in the household. And with me being the only girl, it was like I was the mother figure in the house. So my brothers weren't going to ask how I was doing, that I was crying myself to sleep because of I felt like I didn't have friends, or I felt like I was ugly, or I felt like I was alone, and it just, as an adult, as I got older, it was just something that I taught myself to do, was to not really talk about how I was doing, to not really be honest and open, because it was something that I never, not only did I not learn how to do it, I never witnessed it being done healthily. So with the both of those things, and it's a cultural thing, it's another one of those intergenerational traumas that we just don't really talk about how we're really doing. We wear masks, not even just when we're out, not at home, but like, yes, at work and stuff, but even with our family, with our friends. I recently, a few days ago, just had a conversation with my best friend. And that was literally one of the statements that I said, I don't want to wear a mask. I've never really had close friends because I didn't know how to really express myself. And, that's my best friend. So I was like, I want us to not wear masks around each other. I want us to be our true, authentic selves, tell, what is really going on, because that's how you're really going to deal with it. It can't be addressed until it's addressed. And I feel like that's something that within the BIPOC community, we don't talk about enough. We don't talk about, what people are really dealing with and how we're really doing. And it's a stigma that I really do hope changes, because, as I mentioned earlier, we have little boys who are crying, but they're being told to stop crying and stop being soft. But instead of asking, how they're really doing, we just shut them down. We don't allow them that opportunity and that safe space to really communicate, talk to children, ask them what they're really feeling. You'd be surprised how many young children can really communicate what they're really feeling and what they're going through. And it does start at a young age. And even the older adults who haven't had the opportunity to experience that, I think it's important to really identify that you're not able to do it and be intentional about working to be able to do it, because it'll really allow you to heal some traumas that you may not even have known you were dealing with. Um, so every time I ask someone how they're doing, I really try to be intentional about asking how they are really doing, and then also truthfully answering how I really am doing.
Bree. So guys, let's play a game. Let's play. Put two fingers up, right? Put two fingers up. Put a finger. Put a finger down. Oh, oh my God. Maybe this is not a good game for us to play. But maybe, okay, think about it then, right?
Okay,
Put a finger down if you've ever been told what happens in this house stays in this house.
Yes.
Put a finger down if you've ever stated, well, if you've ever stated how you're really doing, but no one does anything about it.
Yes.
Put put a finger down if you've never had a space to share how you're really doing.
Yes.
I think that, at least from my perspective, when it comes to that question statement, how are you really doing? I come from a place where I was never given the space to share how I was really doing, because it was looked at as, you're a kid, you're a child, stay in a child's place. You don't tell me anything. Even in the moment, I'm feeling like, oh my God, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling, I feel like this was not fair. You can't, like, you hush because you're a child, so you stay there. And this stays with you throughout your life. So now you're in corporate offices and you feel like authority is saying something and that is not true, or goes against all of the values and morals that you're aware of, and you're like, I can't even say how I'm really feeling. And then about the statement about, don't, what happens in this house stays in this house. I can guarantee you the majority of folks I know the Black community, but I know it resonates across the BIPOC community also, in general. And it's this thing within our houses and within our families that we keep whatever is happening in here. And that's something that prevents us from really stating how we're really doing to folks in the outside world. We got our butts whooped for just like telling somebody on the outside, even a cousin or an auntie, what happened in the house yesterday. I got licks because I didn't do the dishes. And I couldn't tell auntie that because what happens in this house stays in this house. And I'm feeling sore because of it. And so you can't say these things. So these things are ingrained since you are a child. And so you take that stuff throughout. And I feel like for me, as an adult, Bree walks up to me. Well, let me not use Bree because Bree's my girl, and we have that. We have that, right? But a stranger walks up to me in Walmart. As a matter of fact, I had an experience on the train one day in New York where this lady, I could have sworn it was my grandmother, that she came back and she was just talking to me. But this lady in New York, she was sitting in front of me and she said, "How are you really doing?" And I sat there for a second. I was not doing well. I was stressed. I had a lot going on with school. I had finals. Like, it was just so many things happening. And I really wanted to cry. What it is what it was. And I wanted to cry because I was never asked that question. I didn't know how to answer that question. And I felt seen for the first time. And so it's just like, like a bundle of emotions. And so a part of me, though, I mean, I answered the question in the moment, if you were wondering, but a part of me felt like, okay, I answered this question, and what? You're a stranger on the train. What are you going to do about it? If I tell you that I'm stressed out because I only got $5 in my account and I don't know how I'm going to get a train ticket back home, I'm going on a job interview and I pray to God I get this job, what are you going to do about it? So why are you asking me how I'm really doing? And so I feel like a lot of times you're in a space where folks are coming to you and they're asking you like, how are you really, like, how are you doing today, Auslyn? I'm all right. That's my default answer. Like, whether I have a million things happening or one, I'm just like, I'm okay. I'm okay because I have life. I'm okay. That's how I look at things. But I don't feel safe to tell you the things that I'm really feeling, because what are you going to do about it? And I think that in the BIPOC community, a lot of times we don't trust folks to tell them how we're really feeling. We don't feel safe expressing how we're really feeling. Your employer comes up to you and asks you, "Hey, Bree, how you doing today?" If I really tell you how I'm feeling, like I need a raise, the AC doesn't work in the back. Like, if I really tell you how I'm really feeling, is that going to be counted against me? Am I going to lose my job for really telling you how I really feel? And so a lot of times we have that pressure because we don't have the same types of, levels and benefits and access as folks who are not like us have. And so we're scared a lot of times that if we were really truthful and say how we're really feeling, that those things will be counted against us. And so we don't say how we're really feeling. And so I want to just appeal and encourage folks in the BIPOC community to trust yourself. You know what I mean? And if you really aren't feeling well, find a space or a friend or a family member that you feel safe sharing how you're really feeling, and share it with them, because you're not alone. There's a lot of us out here that don't feel that feel the same way that you feel. It's a lot of us out here that are scared to say how we're really feeling because of like generational things, or just because we don't feel safe. And so I just want to appeal to our BIPOC folks that, hey, you know, you're not alone. How are you really feeling really matters, and you can find someone that's safe within your own, communities, within your household, within your families, or through therapy. Check Bree for that. That you can have the space to really share how you're feeling.
That was so great, Auslyn. Thank you for the reminder that anyone watching is not alone. We always like to end this episode by reminding you that there will be resources in the description, and there will also be some resources that are made for and by BIPOC communities if you're looking for that space or needing resources in that scenario. So feel free to check that out. And like Auslyn said, also, Bree is your girl. She is the person that helps us with our Find Help tool and our treatment recovery scholarships. So we'll put the Find Help email in the description as well. So just please reach out. Don't be afraid. If you don't feel like you have a safe space, Taloha would love to be that for you, and would love to be here for you if you need some support. I want to thank everybody for joining today and for having so many great things to say. It was a really great conversation, and expanding upon these statements that our audience has been hearing from us a lot this month, but really going in deeper and expanding on why those are important. We will be back soon here at Back to the Basics with another episode. But until then, don't forget to subscribe, like, leave a comment, turn on that notification bell to be notified every time we post. And as always, like we said, you don't have to do this alone. All the information is in the description. You are not weak for needing help, and we're really, really glad that you're here.